What we're going to do today is troubleshoot an intermittent alternator problem. Right now I'm going to start up my Jeep. It starts up, but the voltage sits at around 10 volts. And then the check gauge light is going to come on. Check gauge light is going to come on. I'm under 12 volts of power. Going out and have a look at the alternator's making some noise, but not too bad, because usually a bad bearing will scream really loud, but I got a small hull. So I hooked up my multimeter onto the positive battery terminal off the alternator, and as you can see, I'm reading almost 14 volts. So at this point in time, the alternator is putting out the correct amount of voltage, but you saw earlier it was under 12 volts. So now let's load up the system. With the system loaded up, I'm reading at about 13.7 volts. I got my off-road lights on, my headlights on bright, my fog lamps on, everything that can drain power that I possibly can. Go back inside the truck, you can see I'm reading at 14 volts. So at this point in time, we know the alternator works, sometimes doesn't work. I got a spare one, so we're just going to go ahead and change it out. 2003 Jeep, I'm using a 10 mil wrench to remove the positive battery cable off the battery. This will make sure that it's safe to remove the power cable off the alternator. Remove the battery cable, put it somewhere where it's not going to come back in contact with the positive post. Remove the nut off the alternator, then remove the positive battery cable that's tied to the alternator, put it off onto the side. Push in the tabs and the clip in the back of the alternator and remove the plug. Then we're going to start removing the belt. I got a 1/2 inch ratchet in the tensioner, release the tension, pull the belt off the alternator pulley, and now we're going to be set to remove the 2 bolts and then pull the alternator out. I'm removing the top bolt off the alternator first. It's a little stubborn, have to give a little bit extra torque to break it free, remove it. Now I'm removing the bottom bolt that holds the alternator in place. Once you get both bolts out, wiggle, and the alternator should just pop right out with a little bit of wiggling and pulling. Closely at the alternator, you can see all the cracks in it. The housing is purely busted, so what was happening with the tension on the belt, the rotor would be touching the stator, causing it to short out. You put the new alternator in the Jeep. I find with the 4.0 engine, it's easier to put the bottom bolt on first, get it started, push the alternator up, get the top bolt in, get that in, put your belt back on, hook up your battery connections, and then you're done. Fire it up and see how well she works. I'm just going to start the Jeep up, and once I get started up, you're going to see that I'm going to be reading 14 volts on the board. This is where an intermittent problem like the kind I have would be hard to troubleshoot, because no one would suspect that the housing would be busting, causing it to arc out and short out. But anyways, this is all part of learning, troubleshooting, getting it solved, figured out. Anyways, if you have any questions or comments, post them below. Otherwise, thanks for watching.